It's not going to get solved, the shutdown.
It's going to get solved, yeah. Oh, it's going to get solved.
How?
We'll get it solved. Eventually, they're going to have to vote.
You're saying the Democrats will capitulate?
I think they have to. And if they don't vote, that's their problem.
We will not support a partisan Republican spending bill that continues to gut the health care of the American people.
The Schumer shutdown was never about health care. That's a distraction, and every Democrat knows that. It's an issue that's too complex to be solved on a short-term funding measure like a CR.
I feel like the Democrats really need to own the shutdown. I mean, we're shutting it down.
Well, there's some of the sound about the government shutdown. It's going to be the longest as of midnight tonight. If you look at an NBC poll out, more to blame for the government shutdown, Democrats in Congress now, 42%. That has shifted in a number of polls. Republicans at 25, President Trump at 24. Britt, is this kind of what people are talking about, that they think for some reason it's this week that it comes to an end?
Well, I guess they are, but I think around the country there are not that many people talking about it at all. Now, obviously, there are some sectors of the economy that are, as we've seen with airlines and so forth, that are strongly affected by this, but not that many. And this is an extraordinary thing. This is going to be the longest government shutdown that I've witnessed, certainly over many years. It also may be the most pointless. I mean, the Democrats really have no case here. This is their filibuster is what's keeping the government shut down. There's no two ways about it. And what the Republicans have offered and voted through the House and sent to the Senate is about as neutral and fair and nonpartisan a measure as you could have in a situation like this. It's always been the gold standard in shutdowns to have a clean continuing resolution that keeps spending at current levels. And these, after all, are still the Biden levels of spending that Democrats are refusing to keep.
Yeah, Yamasi, do you think that there's some moderate Democrats, maybe 3, 4, 5, that may say, okay, we've done our part. We're going to negotiate after this reopens?
I believe that if we hadn't have figured out some things around SNAP, there might have been some more pressure there. I mean, we're judged by who we take care of, and I believe our most vulnerable, the children who rely on SNAP, should be at the forefront of this. But it's important to note that I don't think a lot of the American people know that during shutdowns, members of Congress are still paid. So I'm not really sure what the incentive is for them to come to some kind of solution right now. I was a staffer during the longest government shutdown and remained unpaid. It was incredibly hard. And so I think the outside pressure from constituents, from the staffers themselves, the federal workers that are furloughed will be helpful here.
Also, the air traffic controllers, Mary Catherine, I mean, that's a big issue.
Yeah, I think there's some outside pressure building here, coalitionally, specifically for Democrats, with the largest federal employee union saying, hey, let's just do the clean CR that they have proposed so we can get back to being paid. The airline folks coming out and talking about this, the air traffic controllers, of course, and the real life consequences with SNAP. This thing also expires on the 21st, so we've got this short window that might allow for a little bit of climb down on either side to give Democrats something that they can say is a win. I also think it's interesting that post-Tuesday we might get some happier voters on the Democratic side that might allow Democrats to climb down a little bit. And finally, I think Trump should be careful about giving them a release valve by talking about going nuclear on the filibuster. The Republicans absolutely should not. And it makes Democrats go, ooh, we could get the thing we want if we just hold out long enough.
Yeah. I want to talk about something else that's a big deal. New York Times, Hugh, Supreme Court confronts Trump and his tariffs and a test of presidential power. Wednesday, the justices will consider for the first time whether to say no to Mr. Trump in a lasting way. At issue is the legality of his signature economic policy, the use of emergency powers to impose sweeping tariffs on nearly every U.S. trading partner. Here is the president on 60 Minutes on that.
What happens to your economic plan if the Supreme Court invalidates your tariffs?
I think our country will be immeasurably hurt. I think our economy will go to hell. Look, because of tariffs, we have the highest stock market we've ever had. I think it's the most important subject discussed by the Supreme Court in 100 years.
Everyone, Hugh, is gaming out the elections tomorrow, but how do you game out or see the court heading into this tariff hearing in this case?
It's so unbelievably complicated, Brett. It is the non-delegation doctrine. I don't want to put the audience to sleep. It's been dead for a century. Do the justices resurrect it in order to restrain President Trump? I think he's overstating the consequences of that. My prediction, and it's as good as any other prediction, is the Chief Justice writes it. It'll somehow keep some of the tariff power alive, but what he's done has gone far beyond any previous precedent for the use of presidential authority with tariffs. And I have to think that the center of the court, Justice Barrett, the Chief Justice, Justice Kavanaugh, are going to want to rein him back in a little bit and perhaps put up some guardrails while allowing the national security tariffs against China to remain in place, if not more.
But it might be more, Britt. I mean, because this court has come out pretty aggressively for executive power, and this is way down the road as far as what has already transpired on this issue.
Well, the Constitution, Brett, is pretty explicit about who has the power to impose tariffs. And it's not the President of the United States, never has been. And to some extent, that, as Hugh suggested, that power can be delegated to a president for a period of time, perhaps. But it's a little hard for me to figure out how the court is going to get around this. The consequences, as the president suggested, of his authority here being overruled and canceled, in effect, would be pretty serious, because we got all these tariffs on all these countries, and they have responded, and their deals have been made, and they're all dependent on this thing. So this could get pretty messy. I think the court's going to have to be very creative, and they need to be careful that they don't end up simply writing new law, which is not what they're supposed to do.
Well, it's going to be fascinating. It's a big story beyond tomorrow's election. Panel, thank you so much.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.